Hello, and welcome back to Pedagogically Speaking, my podcast where we gather in community to discuss all the things that are happening in our classrooms and hopefully find some solutions, do a little bit of venting. Thank you all so much for the emails that I've been getting. I really appreciate them. I'm going to do a question and answer episode coming up. So if you have any more questions, please make sure you email me. The email is pedagogically speaking pod, POD, at gmail.com. So pedagogically speaking pod at gmail.com. You can keep emailing me those questions. I can't wait to get into them in a future episode. So let's get into it. I'm really excited to talk about some things that have been going on, at least for myself and my colleagues, and that is all around really executive functioning challenges in the classroom that we're experiencing. Term 2, I always think of as this magical term because for this year at least, there's only 10 weeks in this term. And when you think that term 1 for us had 16 weeks, this seems like a dream. But I know personally, I'm already struggling with the demands of a shorter term. And maybe you are as well. So hopefully this episode will help you. So, I just want to say something that might sting a little bit. And that really is that students are not ignoring you. They are not lazy. And I promise that they are not trying to ruin your lesson. Really, students, they're drowning. And every time that we say, why haven't you started yet? Or why is this still blank? Or I already explained this. And we're so frustrated. We're so overwhelmed. We're so stressed out with everything. And that's where that's coming from. And I don't blame any of us, of course, because there's just so many demands on us. And we've put these lessons together, these units together. We've worked so hard on them. We've explained them. And you're going around and there's still usually the same students who have not been able to initiate this task. And so we get frustrated and we say these things. And really, for that student, it kind of just seems like we're throwing more water on a child who hasn't even been able to find the edge of the pool yet. You know what I mean? And so in our heads, we're helping or pointing out a problem, in the hopes that, they haven't realized it and they'll fix the problem. But really, yeah, we're throwing water on a kid that is already having a hard enough time getting to the edge of the pool. So if you're teaching a busy, boisterous, loud classroom, if half of your class is staring at the page like it personally has offended them, if you feel like you are managing avoidance more than you're teaching the content, this episode is definitely for you. And I understand the frustrations about having students who look like they're not doing anything. So that's why today we're going to be talking about executive functioning and how it presents itself, what it looks like in students, what it looks like in our classrooms. And I'm going to give you some techniques that work for me and have worked for 16 years and have worked for have worked for teachers who have implemented these strategies as well. So no, these are definitely not Pinterest strategies, and they're not color-coded fantasy schedules. And I say that because that's my fantasy. I remember teaching, back into my first years of teaching in New Zealand at Johnsonville School. Karen O, she had everything was color coded with these beautiful color coded everything, and she had pens that matched her like post-it notes, and it was like beautiful. And then the same with the colors, like it was gorgeous. And I know lots of people now too, I'm sure you do as well, who do this amazing color coded organization, and everything's so beautiful and it's so cute. And I wish I could do that. because it does look just magical and it's beautiful, but I just don't have the capacity for it. So that is definitely like my fantasy. If I could do anything, I would do that. But yeah, so I just want to let's go over some real classroom solutions that have worked for me. Okay, let's get into it. So, what does executive functioning challenges look like in the classroom? And I think there's really this problem right now where we have historically mislabeled executive function challenges for years. It's been called, we've heard teachers in the past call students lazy and defiant and disrespectful, unmotivated. Um, but if you have a student with executive functioning challenges, the executive functioning part of their brain is really like that air traffic control system. It's handling, like starting, initiating tasks. It's handling the planning of tasks and the organizing and the prioritizing and the sustaining of attention in order to, you know, even start the task and work on the task and then complete the task. It is uh it controls time management. And I think one aspect too that really a lot of people forget is that it actually, executive functioning, it regulates emotions as well. It's the ability to be able to find things hard and still do them. It's the ability to understand that something is, hard, but I don't need to be overwhelmed by it. And so I think a lot of teachers forget that. And so you end up with like a scenario where a student hasn't done something, you're most likely a bit frustrated. That's coming out, and the student breaks into tears. Meanwhile, you're like, I'm the one that should be crying. Right? Like, you're doing this to me. Why are you crying? And I know that you're not saying that to the student, of course, but maybe that's going through your head. I can understand that because that's gone through my head. I totally get it. I remember being like thinking, okay, I have this like problem or this challenge. A student is having this thing, and then all of a sudden they break down, and then I'm like, I have a new problem has arisen, and I already didn't have enough time to deal with the first one, and you don't know what to do. And I think, and sometimes it can be frustrating. You're like, why are you crying? But they're upset because they don't understand what's happening. Because these students also, I'm looking at my computer screen right now, and I've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. I've got 15 tabs open. And a student with executive functioning challenges, really, it's like the brain has 27 tabs that are open, you know? And so there's so much that's happening, and you've gone over the whole lesson, and then you say, start the assignment. And that brain that has executive functioning challenges goes, oh, what? What just happened? What did you say? Assignment. What do I do first? Is this right? What if I do it wrong? Wait, how long is this going to take? Oh, where's my pencil? What are they doing over there? Hmm, this feels hard. I don't like hard. And then what happens? Those students freeze. And that freeze can look many different ways. Maybe that student is a student that puts their head down and just is at the table with their head down, or they've asked for a bathroom break, or they need to fill up their water bottle. Maybe they have decided that they need to sharpen all of the pencils that they can see right now. Maybe they just go somewhere they're talking, or they're just like, I don't get it. Or what I like to think of as the classic, doing absolutely nothing. And I really do think that we need to understand that, like, doing absolutely nothing is certainly a way to navigate the executive function challenges that the student has. But also, somewhere along the way, students learned that if they're quiet, no one bothers them. Right. And they can get to the next block because they have been quiet, they're not disruptive. And then the bell rings or the block changes, whatever happens at that transition, and they're safe. And then They move on to the next thing. And I think in these like difficult and like certainly overwhelming times when we as teachers feel like we're hitting our heads against the brick wall, we really do need to remember that this is not defiance, and it's certainly don't take it personally. This is a student showing you that they are in cognitive overload. And when like we as teachers interpret their overwhelm as attitude, we do end up escalating the situation instead of just scaffolding what's going on. So, and I think that's just really important. It's like how we react and how we talk to things about things to people that can definitely we have the ability to escalate a situation or just like like try to figure out, okay, what steps are we missing? What do we need to get you to the task? Um, and I do want to just remind everyone that this is like about executive functioning challenges, and I know that there is overlap with ADHD with this, but obviously I'm a teacher, I'm an inclusive education teacher, and I am not a doctor. So we're just talking about students who have some executive functioning challenges and not students who may or may not have ADHD. So this brings me to segment 2 and the 3 scaffolds that I think change everything. Um, and I'm kind of hoping, like, I'm hopeful that if you remember nothing else from today, just remember this, which is kids don't need more reminders. Sometimes I wonder if teachers just think if I just say it one more time, it's going to finally click. And it's not. Students really with executive functioning challenge and all students, they need less ambiguity. They really need to understand what does readiness look like? Okay. So readiness means you've got your math book, writing book, whatever it is you're teaching. You've got your pencil, you've got your water bottle, you're not reading a book, you're not talking to anybody. You've got those things on your desk, you're sitting down and you're waiting for the instructions. That's what readiness to learn is. That's what it means when we're ready to learn. And I've had teachers that have put that up on their um door. So as they greet the students as they come in, it's on the door. This is what you need to do when you get in. Excuse me. And that's perfect because you're coming in like, so this was middle school. So you're coming in from recess, you're coming in the morning, you're coming in from, maybe you're an exploratory band, choir, strings. And so every single time they came in, they'd see that they knew because that's how you start. That's how that teacher at least started every lesson. So that was the perfect thing to do. So, and that is part of the scaffolding. Like you need to make sure, like we really need to just give students all of the information and you can't expect students to be able to remember all of this, right? Like, so like that working memory, we really need to like take everything out of their brains and just put it out there. So this is what your desk needs to look like. This is what you need to get out. This is how I know you're ready. Okay. So definitely go over it verbally, but have those posters up. So yeah, we need to really, so when we think about executive function, we need less ambiguity in our classrooms. And I think the 3 scaffolds that change everything at the beginning, like that really help things along is like, let's reduce the starting line. So for me, taking one of the barriers away would be like this idea of like of that the assignment is huge, right? Like so if you're like write a paragraph, instead of write a paragraph, try write one sentence. Just the first one. That's all we're doing today. Or that's all we're doing right now. We're writing the sentence. And this comes down to obviously universal design for learning. So yes, some of your students are going to be writing the paragraph. That's fine. You know what I mean? And some of your students we're starting with one sentence. And I understand that there's not enough EAs and you probably don't have any in your classroom. And so what does that look like? Does that look like you give the assignment to some of those students and the other students are sitting over here and you're like, okay, this is what we're doing. That could be what it looks like. Maybe you have little timers like sand timers that you can get from the learning support teachers to go on their desks that it's like you've got this much time. All we're doing is a sentence. And you you need to have an example of what the sentence looks like already up on the board for everyone to see, because it does help everybody. And need to remember that like that momentum really does beat motivation every time. So make sure that you've broken down. They're not writing a paragraph, they're writing their first sentence. Make sure they know what they're writing about, persuasive essay, or um I was going to try to think of something for younger kids because obviously I work with younger kids. But whatever it is, make sure there's an example and make sure that they understand what they're doing and that they can do it. And really just the second one that I would say is make the invisible visible, which I know we discussed earlier, but planning is invisible. This idea that we do so much of this work in our head and then we would just want students to just do the writing part, right? And they can't do that. So we really need to externalize that planning portion of their assignment. And you absolutely need to explicitly teach what a graphic organizer is, what it does, and why it is useful. Okay. And you need to spend more than one lesson on this. And you need to use different academic scenarios and make it fun, right? So like you might use the burger method for writing a paragraph or an essay, depending on where you are. But then you could use like a mind map for something else, right? So if we're talking about Wicked, maybe the mind map is Glinda, Elphaba, animals, the wizard, tyranny, whatever you want to say. Um, like whatever it is that, the end result is, but you really do need to teach these things explicitly. And really this idea of like, we have a thought and we need to pull it out. We're going to put it on paper. And Poplet is a really great app that you can use as for brainstorming because you can like write if you can write and then I point to my mouth. You can write in the app or you can speak to it. There's talk to text as well. You can take pictures, you can do videos. So there's lots of different like it really takes barriers away from graphic organizing if you can do that. Or then I'm like, Google Slides or doc, talk to text, anything, where if your students need technology. But really like the explicit teaching of it is so important and really just taking the time to be like, oh, okay, so I need to persuade you that, Wicked is the best movie in the world. So I'm going to put Wicked in the middle and then I'm going to think of all my favorite parts and I'm going to put those parts here. So what's my favorite part of this? What's your favorite part of Wicked, right? Like really just taking the barriers away from learning for these students. I actually have a colleague using the Oreo method for their persuasive writing. And I'm like, you really need to just bring some Oreos in to make it more fun. So, like, what are some different ways that we can make more fun as well? Personally, I recently bought postcards for my writing groups because they're doing pen pals. So I thought, perfect. I'm going to have all my writing groups, even if they're not using pen pals, to learn how to like write a letter, write a postcard. Then they all got postcards. So some wrote to their pen pals, some wrote to their um, grandparents. So no matter what you're doing, make sure that the planning is visual and put the steps on the board. Okay, so make sure you write title and what the title is, the first sentence, an example, and a wrap-up sentence. Okay, because when these steps live in students' brains, especially students with executive functioning challenges, the students drown. But when the steps are living on the walls, the students can actually breathe. And if they get sidetracked or they get confused or anything that happens, they can look up and figure it out, ask a friend, ask you, but they've got more points to understanding. All right, so that kind of brings me to my next segment, which is time containment. So I think it's always so interesting, we all hear in the staff room, like, I gave them the whole block. They've had 3 blocks over 2 weeks to do this, and it's not finished and all this. And I think we really need to understand that students who have executive functioning challenges, when you tell students they have 40 minutes, It's too much. That's like a huge open-ended, airy picnic day. So instead, hey, we're going to work for 4 minutes. Okay, I'm setting the timer. Get your visual timer out there, or color in the part of your clock so that when the minute gets there, color in however much chunk of it. And then when the minute hand gets there, we can be like, okay, it's time for a break. Or how's everyone doing? Check in with your partner. This is my favorite thing to do as an inclusive education teacher. Check in with the person next to you, check in with your partner, whichever one you do, elbow partners, swap it out, see how it's going, and give some feedback. Okay. And so I really think that's just so important, because the short bursts of working really lowers that threat. It really makes everything so much more manageable, because you think about it, we're chunking their work. We should be chunking their time as well. I know it works for me. I know that so sometimes my husband and I will be like, we both need to do work. And he's like, I can't do it. I'm not motivated. And I'm always like, motivation has nothing to do with it. You have to do the thing. I'm like, I'm going to set the alarm for 10 minutes. And if we're done at 10 minutes, we'll take a break. And if we think we can go longer, we'll go longer, but we will honor when we feel like we need a break. And most of the time, well, at least for me, as an adult, not as a student, although I'm a student, but as an adult, that works for me, and I can keep going because I get super get super into it. So for me, obviously, I have a problem starting tasks. I really do. And it really works for him as well. And it will work for your students, because yes, like I said already, the short bursts really do lower the threat. And the long blocks of time absolutely trigger avoidance. Like, I know, because the student knows, I can't work for 40 minutes. What does working for 40 minutes even look like? What am I supposed to get done? There's so many questions that you're too scared to start. So it triggers that avoidance, and we really just need to fully help students break it down, because either they're going to go and be like, oh, I did that. That was great. Or they're going to be like, that was really hard. And they do need the break. No matter what, you're honoring where students are at. I think that's really important, because if the students are struggling to do work, it's not that you need a different curriculum. It's not that you need better lessons or to be more engaging. It's really just, we need to be giving students smaller cognitive bites. So, what's something that you can do in your classroom that would really kind of ease some of that sort of challenge around the tension of those working spaces? What's something that you could do you think? So, yeah. All right. So this brings me to segment 3, which is teaching planning without being their planner. And it's so funny. I wrote, this is where teachers burn out. I mean, you're already probably burnt out 100 times over from 100 different things, but this is definitely something that really upsets teachers, and myself included, where you've done the plan for them, but it's too much, because you've had to make 27, 28 different plans for your classroom, because every student needs a different plan, right? So don't do the planning for the students, okay? I need you to really resist the temptation to fill out their planning sheets, because then you're just exhausted, and we really need to just shift it. Model the thinking. Think alouds are so important. Model the thinking. Do not own the thinking. Do not pretend you know what they're thinking, or, if you do know what they're thinking, don't tell them what they're thinking. It's just a recipe for disaster. So instead of handing them a filled-in graphic organizer, you've got to narrate it. Okay, you're at the whiteboard. You've got it on. Maybe you've got it projected on, or you've drawn it on. I draw it on. And I'm just saying, okay, you know what? I'm not sure what my first idea should be. So I'm going to look back at the question. I actually teach this too with my reading. With my older grades, I'm like, why don't we look at the questions first and then read the text? Because I say older grades, this is like grade 2, grade 3, because they're not proficient readers, and that's okay. But they still need to learn that reading is for many different things. And so I still want them to learn you can get information from a text. And so I don't want them to read the whole text read the questions and then have to read the text again, because I actually just don't think that's fair. And I don't see how that creates a love of reading. So I teach them, let's look at the questions. Let's look at the first question and let's read the first question. Okay, now we're going to read and let's see if we can find where the answer to that question might be. Um, so yeah, I think it's really important that we're not filling in these planners and we're saying out loud, okay, I'm going to go look back at the question, because you're teaching the internal dialogue. You're teaching what it means to be kind of learning and a student, and what does learning look like on the inside, okay? And then you're going to ask, what's your first micro step? Not what the whole plan is, micro step. And actually, I always talk about how like I work with the most amazing and the smartest people ever, and I absolutely do. And I think it's always so important to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, because you will learn so much. And so I used to always think of this idea as like of like zooming in, and I could never figure it out. And one of my colleagues that I work with, she's so smart. She's like, I get a flashlight and she'll put some of the, she'll put words or information, whatever they're learning about. And she'll be like, okay, so now we've got the spotlight. Let's zoom in with our flashlight so that we're not spiraling out. We are looking at what we need to look at. So we're like training the brain to zoom in and not spiral out. And I think, I know that this is probably a bit of a spicy thing to say, because we're all here for the students and we want to do our best for our students. But if you are always rescuing, then you're really reinforcing that helplessness, that learned helplessness. And support doesn't have to mean that you're substituting their learning for your knowledge. Okay, you need to let them get there, and we all need to honor the process. And I know that that's easier said than done, because I know that it can take a long time. But that is also just part of like that understanding what students already know and can they activate their prior knowledge as well. So we really just need to see all of this, and we need to understand that learning does take time. And it's so hard to say this because I know we have like less than 10 months to get through an entire year's worth of curriculum, but at what disservice to students? Like students are going to read if they have a love of reading. Students are going to learn if they understand what the learning process is, and students are going to understand what the learning process is if we take the time to teach them what the learning process is. And like I said, this is for students with executive functioning challenges. And hopefully also you have other teachers who are coming in and helping, maybe with a lunch group or different pull-out situations or push-in situations. And if not, then definitely please reach out to the teachers in your building to see, or in your wider community to see how they're handling that, because this is just supposed to be to kind of help the students in your classroom. These are like tier 1, 2 supports, and tier 3 supports would look different. And I do understand that. So let's talk about the assignment breakdown formula. So write this down. When a student says, I don't know what to do, you need to respond with this formula. What's the first verb? What's the first tiny action? What's the success criteria for just that part? What does that part look like? So an example, for assignment, write a persuasive paragraph. What's the first verb? Write. What's the tiny action? Open your notebook. Write the topic sentence. What's the success criteria? One clear opinion sentence. Wicked is the best movie because, I don't know why I keep saying that. Soccer is called the beautiful game because, one clear opinion sentence. And that's it. The success criteria is not the whole paragraph. It's one clean win. Quite frankly, 2. I would call that 2 wins, because they've gotten their book, they've opened it to a page that's empty, and then they've written the thing down. That's amazing. And so also like completion builds capacity. And we see that everywhere, right? Like do a checklist, right? Like how many people love putting their things in a thing, checking it off, and then the like feeling you get when you finish a checklist is amazing. And that's that completion piece. Completion absolutely builds capacity because they learn, hey, I did the thing. I meet my success criteria. I did the thing, and I'm so happy, and I'm so proud of myself, and my teacher is happy. Okay? And then they're like, I can do hard things. And then they'll do the next little hard thing that you give them, and then the next thing and the next thing, and they'll build and build and build. Okay? Capacity. So if completion builds capacity, capacity absolutely builds confidence and self-worth. And that confidence is going to build independence. Absolutely. With enough repetition, enough positive reinforcement, enough identifying that their own feelings of pride when they can complete something, that absolutely will lead to independence. And it might take a long time, and that's okay. All right. So we've talked a little about initiation of tasks and how I also have a problem with that. So I want to just discuss briefly the I can't start solution. And I don't know about you, but I hear this line daily. I can't do it. I can't write. I can't this. I can't that. And I'm just like, I breathe. If I'm in my own room, I look out the window and I don't argue. Of course not. I say, start messy, right? However you need to write it, do whatever you need to do. Bullet point, leave spaces, don't leave spaces, write big, don't write big. That's fine. But just start. We can work on the rest later. I actually have a colleague that says to her students, give me the worst first sentence you can give me. But I don't do that because then I'll get 3 words a sentence. But it works for her classroom because she's built those things up over time, right? And, this really does come from like that, those perfectionist tendencies. And I just think perfectionism stops so many people from achieving things or starting things, right? And we all know that, and we can see it, and we can see that with our students. We can see that with colleagues. We can see that all over. And the thing that I always say to everybody is I always just say, take away the barriers to learning. And here I say, lower the bar to entry. Okay. We're not looking for a masterpiece for the first sentence. I know you're not. But what we need to what we need to do is help the students understand that. Okay. So we're lowering the bar to entry. It's not the standard. It's just the entry. And then use your proximity to the student, stand beside them, don't say anything, and just co-regulate with them. Okay? Let their nervous system borrow from your calm nervous system and let them regulate with you. Because if they're already so stressed out, it's going to be really hard for them. And so just make sure that they can feel your calm. Because if a student isn't starting, it's not about compliance, and it is about capacity. And in this instance, your job really isn't to push harder. It's to make that first step lighter. Because they've learned, either because of the way that they think or from whatever reason, that if it's not perfect, it's not worth doing, or I'm too afraid to make a mistake. And we really need to just take that away, take that stress away, and just say, you're just starting. We're just starting. We're doing the thing. Okay, here's the timer, 4 minutes. What you got? Write the messiest sentence you can write. Whatever it is that you like, whatever phrase you need to say to get your students to start, start messy, or give me the worst sentence you can, or whatever else that you can say that works in your classroom, make sure that you say it. And let me know. Comment or email me. Let me know what you can say to help a student initiate a task. So thank you so much for joining me today. If this episode hit you a certain way, please let me know. Again, you can always email me, pedagogicallyspeakingpod@gmail.com. Find me on YouTube, leave a comment. And I really appreciate you taking the time, because when we do shift from why won't they do this to I wonder what's actually overwhelming them, then everything really does change, and you stop feeling personally rejected, and they stop feeling like they're constantly behind. And the room does get calmer. Not quieter, unfortunately, but certainly calmer. And I think for this that is the goal. So thank you so much for joining me. Tune in every Thursday for a new episode. And I hope you're doing well. And I hope this middle of the term or wherever you are in your teaching journey finds you well.